I would now like to call upon our session chair, Professor Narendra Dixit, Longevity India Investigator from IISc, for the next session. It's titled Insights from Biology. Professor Narendra's work focuses on computational biology, infectious diseases, HIV, COVID-19, theoretical immunology, and microbiomes. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Shreya. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. After the lovely keynote talks we had, both from Deepak and Brian setting the stage, I'm sure we're all ready to dive deeper into the biology. So this session is titled Insights from Biology. We have 4 talks here. The first speaker, may I welcome him on stage, Dr. Satchidananda Panda. He's a professor at the Salk Institute. His research focuses on circadian biology, exploring how biological rhythms impact metabolism, health, and disease. And he's going to tell us today about the circadian code for healthy lifespan. Please welcome Dr. Panda.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting, and thank you for organizing this really exciting Longevity India event. So we all work towards this goal, that is to live at our peak physical, intellectual, and emotional health. Irrespective of age, gender, or health status is a universal human aspiration and also a human right. And along this line, everything that we do, from basic science to translational research, has to meet this goal. And the big question is, why can't we live a long, healthy life, a productive life? And along this line, I would like to say that there are at least 4 major challenges. One is infectious diseases. At least in India, 33% of death can be ascribed to infectious disease, metabolic and chronic disease, which now in India we call them NCD, non-communicable disease. Brain health conditions we don't talk about in India, but actually a lot of people go through brain health issues. And injuries. Again, this is something nobody talks about in longevity conferences, but the fact is there are a lot of us who are injured, and we get injured, and that reduces the quality of life. Then so there are also data to back this up. So for example, these are the data mostly for the US, and a lot of this actually applies to India also. High blood pressure affects almost 50% of adults in the US, and in India, if you use 120 as the criteria, this will also affect nearly 50% of adults in India. Pre-diabetes and diabetes are becoming epidemic, although 15 to 18% are type 2 diabetics who are diagnosed. But if you include pre-diabetes and undiagnosed, that will also add up to 50% of adults in India. 1 in 3 adults in the US as well as in India has liver disease or will have liver disease. And throughout the world, our chance for getting cancer is around 42%. So our lifetime risk for cancer is 42%. Depression and anxiety affects 50% of the population. At least 1 episode of depression and anxiety clinically defined in our lifetime. Digestive issue affects 50%, and then at the age of 60, nearly 50% of adults have at least 1 injury that limits their physical activity, whether it's a back injury, knee injury, or some kind of injuries. And then lung disease, although in US it's only 2 out of 10 who have lung disease, in India the numbers are much higher. It's around 4, because the number 2 cause of death or disability in India is COPD. So then the question is, what would be an ideal longevity plan, if not a pill? Of course, we cannot expect a pill, because so one is it should be able to prevent disease. Second is to solve multiple health issues. As we get multiple health issues, it should also prevent and solve them. Accelerate cure, an ideal longevity plan along with your medication should accelerate cure. And then the 4th one is quick return to full function, or what Brian defined as resilience. And along this, the best thing we have is like Tylenol PM, because it will clear your nose and maybe make you to sleep. So that's the best longevity pill we have right now. So along that line, I would like to introduce the concept of circadian rhythm, or 24-hour rhythm. So these are the rhythms already imprinted in our genome for the last 100,000 years or 200,000 years, which is the daily timetable of every single gene, every single hormone, every single enzyme in our body to rise and fall at the right time. And with that, we actually get the overt rhythm or the obvious rhythms that we see. Almost all of us connect circadian rhythms to sleep. And in fact, if you have an ideal circadian rhythm and you went to bed around 10 o'clock last night, then your deepest sleep happened somewhere around 2 o'clock, and then anticipating waking up, your cortisol level will begin to rise, your body temperature rises, your heart rate goes up, and then as soon as you get up and get exposed to some bright light, your melatonin levels will drop, your cortisol will begin to rise, reaches its peak within an hour of waking up. And your bowel movement is most likely in the first 2 hours of the day, and then peak insulin sensitivity happens in the first half of the day. And the highest alertness happens around this time. Maybe that's why they put my talk around 11:30. And then the muscle performance actually peaks in late afternoon, so that means for athletes, that's the time when most of the world records are made. But for rest of us, if we exercise late in the afternoon, then that has a much better chance of lowering blood pressure and lowering blood sugar than the same exercise in the morning. And as the evening gets in, and then we have dim light or no light, then melatonin begins to rise and we go back to sleep. And that's what we feel is the circadian rhythm. And if you ask what is the best biomarker of health, and I would argue that having a strong circadian rhythm, being able to sleep for 7 to 8 hours, and to have bowel movement every day at the same time, and have physical activity, all of these are actually the best biomarker of circadian of health that you can self-monitor every single day. And over the last 50 years, the field of circadian rhythm has figured out that just like we have a clock, you can imagine we have a clock in our brain that makes us to sleep and wake up. Almost every cell in every organ has its own clock. And the function of the brain clock is to orchestrate rhythms in all these organs so that we have daily rhythms in physiology, metabolism, behavior. And even our gut microbiome has a rhythm. So that means in the middle of the day, we have a set of gut microbiome. In the middle of the night, we have a separate set. So when you are doing a gut microbiome test, you are actually getting only half of the picture. And these circadian rhythms are entrained to the ambient light through light perceived exclusively through blue light sensitive melanopsin containing retinal ganglion cells, which are actually intact in many blind people. So people assume that blind people don't have circadian rhythm or they cannot entrain their circadian rhythm, which is untrue. More than 60% of blind people actually have the intact melanopsin system, so that's how they entrain their circadian rhythm. So for the last maybe 30 years or so, there are many genomics, omics, multi-omics studies done in multiple organisms, including starting from Drosophila all the way to now humans. And if we summarize what we see, the impact of circadian rhythm or which pathways have actually daily rhythms, then what we find is almost every single cellular pathway, starting from mitochondrial structure and function all the way to DNA damage repair, has circadian rhythm. So that means most of the hallmarks of cancer, those hallmarks are also strongly affected by circadian rhythm. Now, the question is, well, if circadian rhythms are so important, why should we care? Or how do we know that we have a broken rhythm? So the first thing is, for a long time, people have figured out that shift workers who actually stay awake late at night and work, they do have broken circadian rhythm. But actually, the International Labour Organization definition of shift work is somebody who stays awake for at least 2 extra hours during the habitual sleep time between, say, 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. for at least 50 nights in a year. So just imagine, 50 nights in a year is a very low threshold. The reason why, because the night you stay awake 2 extra hours, that night your circadian rhythm is disrupted, and then to adjust to 2 hours, your body will take another 2 days to adjust. So that means for almost half of the week, your circadian rhythm is disrupted. And second is social jet lag, change in sleep-wake time and sleep duration by more than 2 hours between work day and off days or party days. For example, in India, we are very social. We go to weddings, and in many weddings, dinner is not served before midnight. And every wedding you go to, your circadian rhythm is broken for the next 3 to 4 days. And then the third one is jet lag. For those speakers who are actually flying here, anyone who has a frequent flyer, high status, their circadian rhythm is very screwed up. Because, for example, I flew 12 time zones, so technically I should take 12 days to readjust, but within 12 days I'm going back. So I joke that I don't have a clock. And then the fourth one, which is also important for India, is second-hand shift workers. So spouses and children of shift workers, they stay awake or they wake up early to give company to their loved ones. And just imagine, in India, we have 588 million people in workforce, and out of them, 25% are card-carrying shift workers. So that means they are categorized as shift workers. Cops, firefighters, doctors, and also your immigration officers that do 12-hour shift plus 2 hours of commute time. But again, the gig workers are not counted as shift workers. So actually, in India, nearly 30% of working adults are shift workers. And so if you combine all of these, nearly 80% of adults in our lifetime undergo at least 5 to 7 years of shift work-like lifestyle. And another thing that happens is when we think of shift work, we are always thinking of staying awake at night. But the truth is, we cannot create wealth without staying awake at night. So then the question is, if you stay awake, then what is happening? What is actually disrupting? When we stay awake, we also eat at the wrong time. And almost 20 years ago now, many circadian rhythm labs actually figured out that eating at the wrong time disrupts the circadian rhythms in many peripheral clocks, peripheral organs, and that leads to disrupted rhythm in physiology, metabolism, behavior. And then what is the functional consequence? If we review last 50 years of data on circadian rhythm disruption and risk for different disease, if you have just disruption for 2 or 3 days or 4 days, then you are going through insomnia or fragmented sleep. But if it continues for weeks, months, or years, then the risk for many of the diseases go up. Nearly 105 different diseases risk go up with circadian rhythm disruption, chronic circadian rhythm disruption, starting from childhood obesity, anxiety, ADHD, to even serious stuff like septic shock, heart disease, and cancer and dementia. And the field of circadian rhythm, essentially our contribution to health is to figure out how we can, what we call training the circadian clock. How do we develop healthy lifestyle that will sustain our circadian rhythm? Second is clocking the drugs. Nearly 85% of FDA-approved drugs, the targets are circadian. So that means optimizing the timing of drug can actually reduce the adverse side effect, and you can also get away with a lower dose, and there will be accelerated cure. And the best example is blood pressure medications. The short-acting blood pressure medications taken at bedtime are much more effective in reducing future cardiovascular disease risk than the same blood pressure medication taken in morning. And similarly, various pain medications taken at bedtime are much more effective in reducing pain in the morning. And the list goes on. Even for many chemos, there is also optimum timing of these drug actions. So I'll just go back to one simple study that we did almost 13 years ago to test whether it's the diet or the timing of diet that actually disrupts circadian rhythm. So there are nearly, I think there are nearly 90 to 100,000 studies in PubMed that shows that high-fat diet causes obesity. But actually, when mice are given high-fat diet, they eat nearly 60% of their high-fat diet during nighttime and 40% during daytime, instead of eating 85% at nighttime and 15% at daytime. So we did a simple experiment. We took mice of equal age and born to the same moms, same genotype, same gut microbiome. We gave one group of mice ad libitum eating, so that means they can eat any time, and the second group got time-restricted eating, or what is now popular as intermittent fasting. This is the first experiment of intermittent fasting, where the food was given only within 8 hours. The mice quickly learn in 3 days they will eat the same number of calories as the first group of mice. So these two groups got the same diet from the same source. The only difference was timing. The first group that ate ad libitum were obese, diabetic, and had all the chronic disease that you can think of, whereas the second group were healthy. Not only that, in the second batch of experiment, if we take the first group of mice and put them on time-restricted feeding, it was reversible, so many of the stuff could be reversed. So that led to the idea that time-restricted feeding alone or in combination with drugs and other better interventions can be a potent way to reduce the risk for many of these diseases. So now the question is, how can we combine all of this? I talked to you about lighting, I talked to you about sleep, and then the food. So we have been doing a lot of studies in humans. So what we advise people is to pick a time when you can consistently go to bed. I'm not telling you, we don't ask people to go to bed at 10 o'clock. If they're going to bed at 10, 11, or 12, they have to be consistent. And after going to bed, they have to be in bed at least for 8 hours, including their checking their email and text, because if you are in bed for 8 hours at least, you have the opportunity to sleep for 7 hours, because all the epidemiological studies have shown that people who sleep between 6.5 to 7.5 hours have the lowest mortality, lowest morbidity than people who sleep more than 8 hours or less than 6 hours. And after waking up, wait for at least 1 hour after waking up for your first calorie bite, because that's the time when your cortisol is pretty high. Melatonin is halfway down. Both of these are very bad for your nutrient absorption and metabolism. And then have so the number 3 rule is to have a consistent time for breakfast, because just like light disrupts your clock or resets your clock, breakfast sets the peripheral clock. So have a consistent time for breakfast, and then count whether it's 8, 9, 10, but no more than 12 hours for all your food and beverages, excluding water, of course. So that's what we call 8, 9, 10, 11, or 12 hours time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, however you call it. And then the 4th rule is to 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, dim down lighting to reduce circadian rhythm disruption, and also no calorie, because that's the time when you eat, your pancreas clock has slowed down, so your insulin production is low. And then 2 additional things is during daytime, don't forget to go outdoor, because outdoor light actually resets your brain clock, which is the most important clock, and then 30 minutes of physical activity is also important for you. So one thing is we always think of circadian rhythm as sleep, but then the other side is actually activity. And if we think of how to be healthy, what I think is to be an athlete, one has to be healthy. And to be healthy, one has to have the mindset and also habits of an athlete. And along this line, almost 4 years ago, we set up an alliance called Wu Tsai Human Performance Alliance, because it's funded by Clara Wu and Joe Tsai, the co-founders of Alibaba. And they put in $220 million, or 2,000 crore Indian rupees equivalent, to start a 10-year project where these are the 6 founding members, and then we have 12 additional members. And our programs go from Moonshots, Innovation Hubs, Agility Project, Education, Communication, and Partnership, all the way from how to design better shoes for female athletes to what happens to epigenetic clock in our brain in response to exercise. I will give you 1 or 2 examples of this partnership. And one of the partnership is with UNESCO. So, for example, 3 years ago, UNESCO started a program called Fit for Life. It's a 10-year project. And what UNESCO figured out is participation in daily physical activity can reduce obesity by 30%, depression by 30%, and increase test scores amongst children by 40%. And 80% of young women, when they're physically active, they actually feel more empowered. They also reduce anxiety. And physical activity in general can increase GDP by $12 trillion before 2050. So along this line, the barriers to physical activity is manifold. One study done within Wu Tsai Human Performance Alliance found, a global study found that the disease burden, the combined disease burden of a city is inversely related to walkability of that city. So the more walkable a city is, the less disease burden is there. So along this line, what I want to convey here is, for the last 36 hours, I've been watching Bangalore live. I found only 1 person who biked, and I don't think anyone in the middle class or upper middle class ever walks on the sidewalk. And just imagine, Government of India actually can do a lot. Almost 10 years ago when they started Swachh Bharat, now 500 million people, according to Government of India, 500 million people have access to toilet. So now, if you want to have a Swachh Bharat kind of project, then we also should think about how 500 million people have access to safe, walkable street in their neighborhood. And I think, unfortunately, the minister is gone and also the secretary, and this was kind of a message for him. Because right now, 1 in 4 adults in India lives in the state capitals or the 5 big metros. So for them, it becomes very difficult to walk. And I challenge any one of you has actually walked on a Bangalore street for 5 kilometers. So the last part is we actually started an app called My Circadian Clock app. It's entirely academic, so there is no cost. We don't make any profit or anything. We ask people to download the app and share their current lifestyle, and then we can actually give them some lifestyle intervention. And the app has been there for almost 10 years now. We have collected nearly 21,000 participants with usable data, and there are a lot of publications from here. And what we are finding is from flies, mice, and humans, when we optimize our circadian rhythm by time-restricted eating and also with some improvement in sleep, then we can have multiple benefits listed here. Not only this, as I said, many medication timing can be optimized, surgery timing can be optimized, and vaccination timing can be optimized. Even our next generation AI modules in robots to IoTs can be optimized for circadian timing. And so the potentials of circadian rhythm in actually improving health from personal level to policy levels are pretty high. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Panda. We have time for one question. There's a hand that goes out there.
Hi, Professor Panda. Absolutely fantastic concept. So regarding walking on the street, right? I think in India, as you have noticed in Bangalore, there's a lot of pollution as well, right? So how will the walking plus the exposure of pollution will finally play out on the circadian rhythm?
You're right on target. Actually, I would never advise anyone to walk outdoor in Delhi 4 months during winter time. But actually, Bangalore is much safer. Means if you look at the pollution level, it's not that high. And the bottom line is, if you like back in San Diego, I can get out of the house and run for 5 kilometers and come back before dinner in 20 minutes. And most of the cities outside India I go, I actually get out of the hotel and run, except in India. And this becomes a very serious issue for our children, because many of you who are above 50, you at least walk to your school at some age in your life. But our children are not walking to the school. And that's a huge issue that will actually blow up in 30 years when our population will begin to decline. Just imagine, in India, every worker who is in the workforce actually supports 2.5 people. And so when one person is sick, actually 2.5 people, though they are also sick and they are not getting any living. So that's why this is an important issue.
I think we'll have to...
yeah, we'll discuss that later. Thank you.
On that sobering note, let's thank Dr. Panda again.
Thank you.